Welcome to Adoption, a breakdown, where we break down adoption and other stuff. Well, here we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Adoption, a breakdown, where I break down adoption and other things. Last episode, episode 4, where I talked about being a 29-year-old virgin, the audio was a little messed up, so I'm going to do a really fast bullet point hit on those to try to review some of those issues because the audio wasn't the best. So basically, the last video was me saying I'm a virgin, 29. I was never a party guy in high school or college. I kept to myself. I was really nerdy. Something I really value now is waiting till marriage to have sex. Um, because for me, physical touch is something that I want to say for marriage. And in terms of the love languages, it's probably my bottom love language. So I don't like being overly physical with people, and even people I know well, I don't like them being overly touchy with me. That makes me uncomfortable. But in general, as an adopted person, as a 29-year-old virgin, that puts me within the 1 percentile. And, I'll admit that makes me weird. It makes me odd. It makes me abnormal. And also being a Christian, believing in God and being religious. A lot of things I have to say, a lot of beliefs I have are going to sound weird. They're going to sound odd. It's going to be off-putting to people. When I say I think the secular dating world is toxic, people won't bat an eye. But then when I also say I think there are things about Christian culture and dating and those scenarios that I think need to be fixed, people might raise their eyebrows and go, "What are you talking about?" Also, I'm not into online dating. I don't do it, and I don't know how. I don't plan to do that. So yeah, those are about the main points from the episode 4 that I talked about before. And it's funny, I had problems with the audio with that, and when I was getting ready to record this, I was trying to fix the audio, which I think I did, but in the process, I ended up having even more audio problems in like recording my audio, and it had to have been like an hour plus of like trying to do this stuff. And it's funny because I told myself that I would share my testimony, my reason of why I'm a Christian, and so that's it's a little ironic, that I was having problems setting this up, and this is the episode that I'm going to talk about why I believe in God. So, yeah, I've touched on it a bit, the fact that I'm adopted, and I'm working a book about adoption. And in the book, I really go in depth about this, and I talk about all the nitty gritty about all those things. And today, I'm going to give a little recollection of that point in my life. So, here we go. I was born in 1993, and I was born in the Philippines on an island called Mindanao. And I have an older sister and at least one older brother. I might have another older brother, I don't remember. And then my birth father, and then my birth mother. And so the story that I was told when I was like 16, and my adopted parents told me, was The what happened was when I was a baby, my mother took my brother away from the island that they were at to a hospital to get a cleft fixed, which cleft palate is like when your jaw separates, um, and you have to get surgery to fix it. And so my mother took my brother to a different island to get the cleft palate fixed. Now, the story goes that they did the surgery, they paid the money, came back, but while they were out and about, my mother got some sort of sickness, some sort of disease. They think it was pneumonia. I think that's what they think it was. I'm not exactly sure, but it was a serious illness. And then I got the sickness from my mother as a baby. And so my father and my mother were put in a very difficult position because they had just spent a lot of money fixing my brother's palate. They had to feed their 3 kids and themselves. And my father was a cab driver, but not like a taxi driver, like a bicycle with seats behind it driver. And so he didn't get paid a lot of money, and they had just spent a lot of money at the hospital getting my brother's cleft fixed. And so my mother and father, they decided to put me, the baby, up for adoption. And I would go to a different island, but in doing so, while at the adoption place, I would get medicine and I would get the treatment I needed to get over the sickness, to get over the illness. But in that same action, my birth mother would succumb to the illness. She would succumb to the disease. And so, in a lot of ways, my birth mother and father decided to sacrifice, that me being with them so that I could live a better life. And my birth mother passed away because the way that plays out, let's say they don't put me up for adoption. The way that probably plays out is we all pretty much starve to death very slowly. And maybe more of us get the sickness, and maybe more of us die from it. And that's probably how it would have played out. But I was adopted about around the age of 2, and so I don't have any memory of my time living in the Philippines. I don't remember my birth mother's face. She passed away when I was a baby, and I don't know where she's buried. And in fact, growing up, growing up before I was told the whole story, all I knew was I had family in the Philippines, but my birth mother had passed away, and I was the youngest. And so I thought that because I was the youngest, that maybe there was some sort of complications during when I was born. That's why my mother passed away. And so growing up, till I was 16, till I was told the story, I thought I was responsible for my birth mother's death. That and that's not good for a kid. That's not good for anybody. That'll really mess up somebody mentally and emotionally and physically. And growing up, that's what happened. You know, when I was younger, I was a really rambunctious, energetic kid. But when I started getting into my teen years, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, I became really rebellious. I became really hateful. I became really spiteful at times. And I really kind of steeped myself in my anger. And I really struggled with who I was. And I struggled with my meaning in life. And I struggled with my meaning in the world. And I was just like, am I just going to be someone who killed their mother and is bullied for being different? You know, bullied for being Asian in a predominantly white town, you know, treated differently because of that, you know, and not knowing who I am really growing up. Is that my fate? Is that my destiny? And so I had this like really bad streak when I was in my preteen or my early teens, um, that even carried on even a little later, where I was just really, if a psychiatrist or psychologist or mental health therapy professional wanted to give me a diagnosis, they probably would have put me down for oppositional defiant disorder, because that's just what I did, and that's just who I was. And you know, I don't want to touch on it too much, but there was an instance when I was in my younger teens when I made a really bad decision, and I let my anger get the better of me, and I actually was arrested and put in juvenile detention center. At least that's what they called it then. I don't. They might call it something else now. Um, you know, and I was in there for 3 days, and it was kind of crazy. Like, I came out of juvie talking like the people that were in juvie and acting like them, because I was so focused on just, you know, becoming like the people around me to get by. But anyway, all that to say, I really struggled with anger growing up, and I really let that control me. And I was just kind of a whirlwind of emotions, and it wasn't good. It wasn't good. Sure, I was a fun guy that liked to laugh and stuff like that, but I really struggled with a lot of those serious, you know, who am I questions. It wasn't until later in high school that I really thought, you know, hey, maybe I should try this Christian thing, because, you know, I was forced to go to church as a young kid, you know, tag along with my parents. And I just thought that because I was with them that I was a Christian. You know, I just thought because I went to church and I did what my parents told me at church, and then I read my Bible and then I prayed, that that made me a Christian. But even though I thought that, I still struggled with all this anger. I still struggled with, you know, getting arrested that one time, you know. Uh, and so I really wasn't a Christian that was living out an authentic life. And it wasn't until high school that I wanted to turn that around. And so, you know, I went on a youth conference that was called BNYC, or Momentum. I think it's still going on. I don't know if it is, but that's like a big Midwest thing. And one of the one of the talks during the week, they had a altar call, which means they give a chance for people to come and confess and give their lives to God, and that's what I did. I was like, I want to recommit my life to God, and you know, that kind of was the springboard for me to try to be a Christian, but that really opened the gate for me, just legalistically living my life. And later in high school and into college, for the most part, I took that, and even though I had good intentions with trying to recommit my life to God, I kept trying to earn His grace. I kept trying to earn His love. I kept trying to earn His mercy. I felt like if I was perfect, I felt like if I did all the right things, that I was worthy of love, that I was worth Him loving me, that it would make sense that, if I did this and this and this in the Christian world, that my problems would go away. I treated God like a genie in a bottle. I treated Him like a magical eraser. I treated Him like, Santa Claus. I treated God like this, all-seeing, all-knowing cop and the sky, and I had all these wrong ideas of who God was, even though I was trying to live a real authentic Christian life. And I did a lot of things that were good and with good intentions. Like I mentioned before, I was an RA at the Christian school, Christian college. Up until that point, I did Bible studies, led Bible studies with my friends. I was part of worship teams, where I played drums, played keyboard. I would go on, the Christian youth conferences. I went on a summer ministry travel program called Operation Barnabas, which I think is still a big thing now. Did that. I was doing a lot of stuff to try to legalistically curry and earn God's favor, when that's not how Christianity works. And so, I talked about it before in my depression video about how, I quit as an RA, and that was really my come to Jesus moment. That was really my rock bottom moment for the first time. That was really I'm hitting the bottom of the barrel. I'm all out of rope, and so that was me hitting the wall with the RA job, because I had put all of my stock into this job. Up in that, it was like the crystallization of all of my intentions of legalism. It was this job. This job is who I am. This job is what it means to be a Christian. The better I am at this job, the better Christian I am, the more perfect I am at this job, the more God will love me. And that's not how Christianity works. That's not how believing in God works. A lot of people go through that, and they're like, and that was me. And so actually what happened was, in between that moment of hitting the wall and the other moment of circling back, I actually considered myself an atheist. I actually considered myself, I don't believe in God. I cursed God to his face. I cursed my family and my friends, and I, shoved everybody away. And I was living in darkness. I was living in depression. I was living in nothing. I was just in a tunnel of suffering, and I was there for a long time. Eventually I realized, I think there's more to life than living like this. I think God has a plan for me with all the things that He's put me through. I think everybody deserves a second chance. And so I reached back out to God. I reached back out to my family, my friends, and I found out this crazy thing. I found out that God was who he said he was, that he had not changed, that he still loved me, and that no matter what I did, he would still call me to him. And so I realized through those experiences that my earthly adoption is not the same as my spiritual adoption. You know, it's similar, but it's not exactly the same experience. And so I realized, there's a lot of pain in my earthly adoption, but with being a Christian, God calls us into his family, if we confess, our sins and declare Jesus is Lord and ask him to live in our heart. And, that's the Holy Spirit. Our hearts change. Our hearts become about serving. They become about worship. They become about loving. And as a Christian that's trying to be authentic, you see those things and you see those desires. And so for me, you know, that was like that's like the big reasons why I'm a Christian is because I went through all this suffering and it was really hard and I spit in God's face. I was like, screw you, God, you don't know me, you don't love me, you suck, blah 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 blah. But then after trying to do things my way, after trying to live life my way and realizing, oh, like this sucks, and then going back to God and being like, okay, God, like I'm gonna try doing it your way, and him kind of welcoming me back with open arms. Like it was just humbling and crazy. There's a story in the Bible that talks about the prodigal son, and for those of you that know, you know what that story is about. But it's essentially about you know this guy who had a very loving father, and he left his father's home to try to do his own thing, and he failed at it. And then he was at the end of his rope, and he was worried that even because he had kind of left his father, that his father wouldn't welcome him back, even though he had kind of spent all his money and all this other stuff. But when that son that had left returned and wanted help from his father threw him a welcome home party. And that's how God is with us. He lets us try to do our own thing, and then when we realize we messed up and we want to do things his way, we want to try again and do it over, he welcomes us back with open arms. And the more, in recent times when I think about God's love, it terrifies me, because I know, I'm always going to wrestle with, how much God loves me and how much I feel like I failed him. And so, I'm trying to find, let me try to find this, let me try to find this document. So, the other day, now normally I wouldn't share this because, like, I really think that, like, as a Christian, like, as you're trying to do stuff, like, we should seek to do things with the aim of the purity of it. Like we need to try to do things for God, just for doing them for God, not to impress people, not to try to get this thing or that thing, not to try to manipulate people. And so, I think, obviously it's good to have, groups or Bible studies where you meet up or prayer groups where you meet up and stuff. That's great. Do that. Yeah. But like if you're using, Bible studies or reading your Bible or praying or doing all this other like, volunteer work as like a way to say, hey, look at me, I'm great, then, you need to check your heart. But anyway, all that to say, recently, I prayed to God in earnest for the first time in a long time. And I jotted it down as kind of like a journal entry. And I want to share it because I feel like there might be some people out there that might resonate with it. So this is my prayer that I typed out on June 8th of this year. Dear God, I ask for help in worshiping you in all I say and do. One day I will die, despite my fears and misgivings of the unknown, and I will be in your presence. I will be waiting to hear, well done, good and faithful servant. And even though that is what I desire, I hope in my current affections I do not replace love for obligation. I love you, I truly do, but I am ashamed at how small my love compares to yours for me. In my own depravity, I have experienced the pain of experiencing love, because in the joy there is bitterness, in the smiles there can be tears. And your love for me over the years, despite its warmth, is abundant in toughness. Of course, I cannot judge that toughness, for my understanding is minuscule. But in the bumpy road I've endured while loving you, I've found my own human folly to be the seed of misgivings and worry. Not only am I afraid to hear your affirmation, I'm afraid of the ride before the dive. I covet, I envy, and I fantasize. Dear God, help me to love you like I did when I was an ignorant child. For in the bliss of my general immaturity, therein I could love deeply and freely without fear. So there's that prayer from June 8th that I prayed recently. And like I said, I'm not sharing that to be, oh, look at me, look at me. I'm sharing that because, that's raw and real. Those are my recent struggles of trying to be a Christian and wrestling with being adopted and trying to be okay with being single in this weird dating world that I'm in. And that's just me saying, hey, I'm afraid and I'm weak. And, I constantly make mistakes and I'm constantly falling short. But then I remembered when I was praying that prayer that when I started out as a newborn Christian, and, like I said, I made mistakes during that time where I was overzealous. I tried to do too much with the thought of legalism. But there were times when I was a young Christian, when I had rededicated my life to God, where I just pursued God with not a care in the. I didn't have a care in the world. I didn't care. I loved Him freely and deeply, and I didn't have any worries, and I didn't stress out about things. I pursued Him like I was swimming in the ocean. And yeah, there are scary things in the ocean that like you want to avoid, like, sharks and stuff. But I pursued God like I was swimming in the ocean without fear, you know. And recently I've been loving God with like being worried about the jellyfish. I'm worried about the sharks, the spiritual jellyfish, the spiritual salt water that'll get inside my nostrils and burn my lungs. But that's the great thing about being a Christian and being religious and really pursuing God in an authentic way. You reach a point where you realize, this life is meant to be hard. This life is meant to not be easy, and there's going to be suffering, and it's going to be difficult. But ultimately, that's okay because, Jesus went through and he paved the way and he showed us how to overcome adversity, to really be emotional, but not to be crazy, Jesus was angry and pissed off, but he didn't sin in his anger. Like how crazy is that? I was just thinking about that today. Jesus, he got super mad and angry. He was flipping over tables and he made a whip and he was whipping stuff, but he didn't sin. Obviously, like, you can't make a one-to-one comparison, but I'm just trying to say that, people want to say that Christianity and the Bible and God and believing in God is the real, like, stuffy, robotic, standoffish, razor edge, hollow experience. Like, people want to say that it's archaic and dead in a sense. But really, when you're pursuing God and you're pursuing Jesus, you realize how alive you can be, and you realize how, Jesus and God, they call us to live a life that's not hollow, not robotic, and so for me, ultimately what I'm trying to say is, I'm kind of at an interesting cross point with all of my beliefs and my experiences. And, I believe that part of why I want to share what I've been through and part of why I want to share what I've experienced is because, yeah, I want to help people. And yeah, I want to be able to support others. But on the other hand, I think it's something that God has called me to do. I think it's something that God is pushing me towards. And I don't know where it's going to go. I don't know what the end game is. But I firmly believe that I want to help people and I want to encourage people by just being open and honest with what I've experienced. And I believe that's something that God is calling me to do because, also, like, when I take a step back and I think about all of my painful memories that I've experienced, those times are dead. Those times are dead. Like, I'm not experiencing them now. So for me, they're not as painful or as crazy as they were when I was first experiencing them. But, I know I know there are other people out there who have been adopted, who have experienced things that I've experienced, that pain is real, and that pain is happening to them right now. And I want to help. I want to follow what I believe God is pushing me towards, and we're gonna try to do these things and see where it goes. And if you enjoyed listening to me kind of rant and filibuster about this stuff, and you're interested to see where this is going to, with the book and all that, feel free to leave a like, comment, subscribe. And yeah, I don't know what the future videos we're going to have. This is kind of a serious video. I don't know the future videos we're going to have. We may have like less serious videos in the future, kind of as like a reset, as a palate cleanser. But these are really important things that I want to talk about that I think people should consider. So thanks for listening, everybody, and I'll catch you next time on Adoption, a Breakdown. See you later. Thanks for listening to today's episode of Adoption, a Breakdown, where we break down adoption and other stuff. See you next time. Bye-bye.